The world's most popular sport is called football almost everywhere on Earth. In Brazil, it's football. In England, it's football. In Germany, it's football. In Spain, it's football. In Argentina, it's football. In fact, if you travel across most of the planet and ask someone about football, they'll immediately know which sport you're talking about. But in the United States, it's soccer. And here's the strange part. The country that invented the word soccer wasn't America. It was England. So how did the entire world end up calling the sport football while Americans kept a name the British themselves abandoned? The answer goes back more than 150 years, and once you hear the full story, you'll never look at this debate the same way again. Let's start with the obvious question. Why isn't soccer called football in America? At first glance, the American argument seems perfectly logical. After all, soccer players spend almost the entire game using their feet. Meanwhile, American football players spend much of the game throwing, catching, and carrying the ball with their hands. So, shouldn't the names be reversed? Shouldn't soccer be football? And football be something else? Surprisingly, that's not how the word football originally worked. Centuries ago, in Europe, football wasn't named because players kicked a ball with their feet. It was named because it was played on foot. That may sound strange today, but at the time, it made perfect sense. Many sports were associated with the upper classes and were often played on horseback. Games played by ordinary people on the ground were sometimes referred to as football games. Over time, dozens of different football games appeared across Britain. Some allowed players to carry the ball, some focused on kicking, some had almost no rules at all. In one town, the game might look completely different from the version played in another town. It was chaos, and eventually someone decided that needed to change. But before we get to that, we need to talk about the moment that accidentally created the word soccer. Most Americans believe the word soccer was created in the United States. It's one of the most common assumptions people make about the sport. But it's completely wrong. The word was invented in England. To understand why, we need to travel back to the year 1863. At the time, different football clubs were trying to agree on a single set of rules. Some wanted a game focused primarily on kicking. Others preferred versions that allowed carrying the ball. Eventually, a group came together and formed an organization called the Football Association. Their version became known as Association Football. And that's where things get interesting. Students at elite British schools had a habit of shortening words and creating nicknames. For example, rugby football became rugger, and association football became ASOC. Then, soccer. Yes. The word soccer literally comes from the word association. Not America, not television, not marketing. England. For decades, British people openly used the word soccer. Newspapers used it, fans used it, players used it. It wasn't controversial, it wasn't unusual. It was simply one of the accepted names for the sport, which raises a fascinating question. If Britain invented the word, why did Britain stop using it? As the years passed, one version of football became far more popular than all the others. Association football exploded across Britain. Stadiums filled with fans, local clubs became community institutions, professional leagues emerged, and gradually, there was less need to distinguish it from other football games. People already knew which sport you meant. So instead of saying association football or soccer, most people simply started saying football. The shorter name won. By the middle of the 20th century, football had become the dominant term throughout Britain. Meanwhile, the word soccer slowly began to sound old-fashioned. Then something unexpected happened. While Britain was moving away from the word soccer, America was holding on to it. And there was a very specific reason why. While soccer was growing around the world, another sport was becoming incredibly popular in the United States: American football. Universities embraced it. Fans packed stadiums. Professional leagues emerged, and eventually, football became one of the biggest sports in the country. There was just one problem: the name. Americans already had a sport called football, a hugely popular one. Changing the name would have created endless confusion. Imagine asking someone, "Did you watch the football game last night?" Which football game? The one with touchdowns or the one with goals? The simplest solution was to keep using the term soccer. And that's exactly what happened. The United States didn't create the word. Americans simply continued using a British nickname that Britain itself was abandoning. Ironically, the term that many people criticize Americans for using started in England. And the more you look at the history, the more reasonable America's choice becomes. But here's where the story gets even more interesting, because America isn't actually alone. Many people assume the United States is the only country that uses the word soccer. That's not entirely true. For many years, countries such as Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland, and Canada also use the term extensively. In some places, they still do. The reason is often the same. Those countries developed other forms of football: Australian rules football, Gaelic football, rugby football. When multiple football sports exist in the same culture, different names help people distinguish between them. Suddenly, the word soccer doesn't seem so strange. It becomes practical, and that's why this debate is often less about language and more about tradition. People become attached to the words they grow up with. For billions of people, the game is football. For millions of Americans, it's soccer. And neither side is actually misunderstanding the history. They're simply using different parts of it. Today, nearly every country on Earth calls the sport football. Yet one of the most common jokes online is that Americans are wrong for calling it soccer. The irony is almost perfect. The word soccer was created by the British. It spread through the English-speaking world. And while Britain eventually returned to football, America kept the older nickname alive. So the next time someone says Americans invented the word soccer, you'll know the truth. They didn't invent it, they inherited it, and they never stopped using it. As the World Cup unfolds across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, millions of new fans are discovering the sport for the very first time. Whether they call it football or soccer, they're watching the same game that has united billions of people around the world. And in the end, that matters a lot more than the name. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more World Cup stories, soccer history, hidden facts, and explanations designed for new fans. And in our next episode, we'll answer another fascinating question. How can the FIFA World Cup be bigger than the Super Bowl? The numbers are absolutely unbelievable. See you in the next video.